we haven't had to manually calendar a court hearing in like a year. And the AI system at this point hits it every single time. Never missed a hearing in like the last year, which is awesome.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to the Automated Lawyer Podcast. I am one of your hosts, John Fritz, and I'm joined with my co-host, Dan Schnurbusch. Dan, what's going on today?
How's it going, John? Just, we've got the viral bugs coming back through the family. So now we are, it's begun. So we are, we've had the first several days now of not leaving the house. And now we're probably going to batten down for the next 3 weeks, if I had to guess. That seems to be our general thing. When one person gets sick and then it goes to the next and the next and the next. And then you just kind of sit around for a while. It's winter for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But,
Same boat here. I was at home all last week, and it gives me a lot of anxiety when I work from home. I know you work from home, like all together, and that's your default. But like for me, like I need that. Like I need to physically leave my house and go to my office, and like puts me in a different mindset of like.
Yeah.
Just like efficiency and like, just like, hey, let's grind, let's work, let's get shit done. And when I'm at home, I'm still trying to do that, but like I have like this, like, it just doesn't feel right. You know what I mean? It just doesn't.
I hear you. Yeah. I got to put on gym shoes or else my brain doesn't know it's time to work yet. So that helped. And, I'm pretty excited though. We just had a contractor over. We're remodeling, doing a full renovation of the home office and a playroom, and it's gonna be sweet. I'm gonna have a giant like built-in like cabinet thing for the just storing crap and beautiful desk set. I'm gonna get a nice little like tinkling little little fountain of some kind, and maybe some like burning Zen meditation things. I don't know, but it's going to be like an oasis, and I'm very excited about this.
Well,
could you do that at a public office? I guess, but for me,
I mean, I have
I do whatever.
may or may not have a cart that has bourbon glasses on it in my background here. But it's a special occasion cart, so it's probably comes out maybe once or twice a year, but for my office people, or the people around me in the office. So anyways, what are we going to talk about today on since we're talking about automations today? What are we going to go for?
So we're kind of what we're going to do is just kind of crash through some example stuff. I'm going to share my screen. What people watching on video will be able to see, and we'll try to talk about it so that audio people can understand as well. But basically we're going to go through some interesting automations and then kind of like talk about how it works and just kind of help people demystify the stuff, I think, because it can be kind of intimidating, especially like people who haven't worked with like Zapier and Make before, particularly, are, I think, a little overwhelmed by the idea of digging in. What is this software and what are all these bubbles and all these lines? I remember when I first started learning Make, I was like, what is going on? Like I'd see people post these crazy Make automations. I'm like, what is going on here? And then now I've built a whole bunch of them myself. I'm like, oh, okay. It makes a lot more sense now. But
yeah, I'm actually in that boat as well.
I think we're going to,
when I see I see your screen on Make, I'm like, ooh, yeah, that's intense. That's intense. Like, I can pretty much do anything in Zapier, but like, building from scratch in Make I still have not tried to do that yet. It's not that, it's a little scary.
Yeah. The biggest thing, there are two big things that distinguish Make, aside from being way cheaper than Zapier. The distinguish Make from Zapier is, and they both relate primarily to arrays. So in like databases, like you can, like, let's say you run a search module or a search action, like, oh, I want to find the contact record that matches these conditions. Maybe the name is X or email address is Y. Well, if the result is one record, that's simple. It's just a single object that you can work with in a subsequent step of this app. Well, what if your action returns like 4 different records that all match those criteria. Like, I want to fetch every case that is in the probate administration stage. Well, that might be like, 50 records. And Zapier doesn't let you work with those. You get one record back, you get to play with that one record, and that's it. As far as I'm aware, you cannot do anything with arrays. Yeah, and that's what an array is. It's just a set of data, repeated, like multiple instances of a piece of data that can be fetched through one of the tools. And Zapier doesn't let you do anything with those. Whereas Make will actually return the whole array. It's like, here's all 50 records that match your criteria. And then you have to figure out what to do with those and like how to interact with those. And that's where Make is both way more powerful than Zapier, but also adds a layer of complexity that you don't have to get into. But if you do, it is both extremely powerful and a little intimidating. So that's kind of the main area that intimidates people. And then the use of like functions, like inline functions, like, whereas Zapier has like formatter steps, like, oh, I want to format this date into a different structure, or I want to extract this thing from this piece of text. Well, Zapier does that in a formatter step, whereas Make just has like functions that you have to learn to like write their syntax, which fortunately is not that complicated, but it is very intimidating for people who are not familiar with programming at all. So I want to go through a couple of examples. But did you have something?
No, I was just say that, I feel like Zapier is, they come out with kind of little different things to try to make the advanced tools, kind of more compelling on their end as a product, right? Like the filtering, right? So you can pull all, you can basically say, pull everything and then filter so it only, right, produces a result that, or you're only triggering or only, dealing with a result that is a specific type, right? So you can filter and say, oh, I need to pull everything, and then only deal with, cases that are in, the administration phase, right? And then put those wherever the trigger goes into, right? So there is some functionality from that. But again, I know what you're saying when it comes to, having a bulk call versus basically just pulling a single record and then doing a single kind of trigger that actually a single action that that does something.
Yeah. So like this is what you're looking at on the screen right now is I used to have this built out in Zapier, and I switched it over to Make recently just because it's cheaper to run, and why not? And this is our automatic court hearing calendaring system. So like we haven't had to manually calendar a court hearing in like a year. And the AI system at this point hits it every single time. Never missed a hearing in like the last year, which is awesome. And it's so simple. Like it doesn't need to be all you really need are these first 3 nodes. Like anything after that is just fluff and like nice to have. But it's really simple. So like you can see here, it really just starts with, this is Gmail. And what it's doing is just watching emails. And we had to write, it's checking, watching the inbox. And we had to write a basic query. So like Gmail lets you write, like they have their kind of like, what do they call it? Like their search filter syntax or their language they use. And you just Google it, like Gmail filter. And it's basically the same for like Outlook and whatever web program or email program you're using. A lot of them use the same filtering syntax. You can just Google it or ask ChatGPT is what I recommend people do. And just be like, hey, here's what I want. And ChatGPT, can you format this into a, Gmail search filter? So it's just saying it's looking for emails from the courts or a different court email address. And
in the words hearing schedule.
And I also wanted to include one of these terms, either, scheduled court event basically what I did is I just went to the court hearing emails that we get from Missouri CaseNet whenever stuff is scheduled. And I looked at the language that the court uses in their automated emails to indicate that a hearing has been set. And I just copy pasted that language into the search filter. And I said, hey, I need to find all emails that contain these various formulations of something related to a hearing. And you could make this search even more broad and just put like the word hearing in and then tell the AI to determine whether it's a scheduling hearing or not. But I wanted to, at the time I was trying to cut down on the number of operations being used in Zapier and Make. Didn't want it to trigger off of thousands of emails. So I used a more refined prompt, and that's all it's doing is it's fetching emails that match that thing, and it's running every day at 9 o'clock in the morning. Right. So nothing wild here. You can just hit add. If you want to add a scenario, you go to, in this case, we added Gmail. You're watching emails. That's it. This little section here is just the connector bubbles between nodes. And you can use this location to add filters. So like whereas Zapier, you might need to add a whole filter step and burn an operation for that. Well, in Make, it's just kind of the connection between two nodes. You can write a filter. And what we're doing is we're just passing that data into ChatGPT. So talk
about that a little more specifically when it comes to your GPT. Is that a custom GPT? Is that just OpenAI's model that everybody has access to, or?
Yeah, no, this one is not a custom GPT because I don't think it needs it. It's all it's being asked to do is extract pieces of data out of the court hearing email. So I don't need to give it a ton of context, and any context I do need to give it, I'm just giving it in the prompt. So like you can see here, we added a ChatGPT step. So like we add, and I just search ChatGPT and click OpenAI, and then you can see that's added here. And these are the different actions. There's a bunch of different actions in here. And the one and probably the most useful and most commonly used endpoint that you would look at is the transform text into structured data. And what this does is it just takes raw text and turns it into variables that you can then pass throughout the rest of the automation. And that's kind of the magic of this step, is how we're basically, taking email parsing and then giving it a brain instead of just following a rigid computer script. So, like, here's what I'm doing is I'm passing the subject, the body, the HTML content. So it has the whole email that we care about, all the information in it. And then I'm telling it to do stuff like extract the cause number. Here's some examples of cause numbers. Just talk to it like you would talk to an associate, but a dumb associate that has no context about your firm or the world. Just like, here's what I want. Here's what you should look for when you're trying to decide this. And set the data type. This is the text. It's not a number. It's not an array. It's just text. You can give value examples too to help it improve the reliability of its output. I haven't needed to do that. Hearing date. So this will extract the date. And I did this for another guy where he wanted to have it set up where it could detect reschedulings, where it would find out when an event was rescheduled. So what we did there is we just split it into two variables. We had like an old hearing date and new hearing date, and instructed the AI that if there's only one hearing listed, just list that as the new hearing. If there's two, then I want you to list both the old hearing date and the new hearing date, because then later we can search Google Calendar for, the old date first and then the new date, and, create or just move or update the calendar event. So you don't end up with a calendar full of like fake events that have already been rescheduled and stuff like that. So it's not that hard to do.
So is this through the open API, through ChatGPT's their API module, or is that through, is that how you're accessing it, or is it, can you connect it? Is there another way to connect when it comes to that?
Yeah. So this is just their native ChatGPT connector, the name brand one that OpenAI wrote and maintains inside of Make. The same thing that they maintain inside of Zapier, where they have the Zap connector.
Okay. So so it's not something. Choices. Yeah, it's not a backdoor API that you're custom that you're doing. So pretty much anybody can basically pull these up and connect ChatGPT if you have your account with them, just like you do in Zapier, and then make the connections and then give prompts.
Exactly. Well, the one distinction I would make is that when we're doing this, and there's a couple of cool things to know about this too, is when we're doing this is we're accessing ChatGPT through the API, or the application programming interface. This is not the chat window interface that people log into on your computer and start chatting. This is a separate system. Okay. To set this up, you have to go to, it's like platform.openai.com. It's the developer backend. Okay. Don't let that scare you. Like, it doesn't need to be, it's not scary. It's just you set up an account there and then it'll generate a key. And I don't mean you, I mean the royal you, anybody who's out there listening.
Yeah.
Generating an API key, and then you just plug the API key in when you're setting this connection up, and that's it. You're done. You everything you needed to do to set up your API connection for ChatGPT is right there. Is done. You can go further, and you can like set up custom vector stores and custom assistants and all that other stuff, and then you can access those through Make and ChatGPT and Zapier. So like if let's say you wanted to make Eleanor available through the API, you could duplicate all of her stuff into an assistant through the platform backend. And then you would be able to access Eleanor programmatically through Make, Zapier, wherever. Like if you wanted to pass her every email or email, you could do that.
Yeah, I mean, because I guess that's one of my, here's kind of my thing. And I know there's lots and lots of lawyers, including yourself, that are using, OpenAI to function, right? And when it comes to, different pieces of their law firm, right? For me, I'm like, I'm a little bit hesitant just because I'm very conservative in this approach. But what about the people that like me that are like, hey, do I really want? I mean, understanding that emails from the court, right? So I assume that the Gmail emails come in, they're from the court, right? And then Gmail is filtering those out. So it's only pulling those emails out, right? And then pushing those emails into ChatGPT. So there's obviously there's no other client communications or any sort of thing that's being pushed into ChatGPT that's being filtered, right? Because that's what my concern would be is like, hey, I want to make sure that nothing is going into the module that the module is being trained on, especially, attorney privileged, communications or just other sensitive or confidential emails, right?
Right. So, there's two things to know, and that's the other thing I was going to mention is when you're accessing ChatGPT this way, you're accessing it through the API, which has the same security and privacy standards that their enterprise plan does. So, like if you, let me see if I can switch my.
Is it used to train? Is it used to potentially train OpenAI's larger model, or no?
No. So if you come here, this enterprise privacy at OpenAI, trust and privacy are at the core. We're committed to privacy for a business for our products and API platform. Okay. So whenever you're accessing through Zapier and Make.com, you're accessing through the API. So ownership, you control and own your data. We do not train our models on your business data by default. You own your inputs and outputs. You control how long your data is retained, but that's only for enterprise. It has all this other stuff, various security compliance levels, like this SOC 2 audit. It has basically the highest level of security audit of any platform in the world. So, I mean, like my philosophy on it is like, if you trust your data with Clio or my case or, Filevine or wherever you're uploading your data now, there's no great distinction between them and ChatGPT and OpenAI. It's just another highly secure platform that the information is being exposed to. So as long as they don't have like the ability to like, as long as they're not like training their models, because like you could imagine a situation where they train their models on your data, and then somebody could Google like or ask ChatGPT like, hey, that John Smith case? Is John Smith, what are his assets like? Like you could imagine that kind of information getting into the training data.
Sure.
And that would be good.
Yeah.
But as long as that's not happening.
And I guess I like
as long as that's not happening, I am less concerned about it.
Yeah, I guess what you're telling me, there's no difference between what you're doing now and like Eleanor, which we don't even put confidential information or client information in Eleanor anyways. But Eleanor is, there is no connection with any outside world, right? It's very walled off, right? So when it comes to the, not using the information as a training model, but we also don't want Eleanor getting access to open, basically all the other materials out there that other people have. So there's the training piece and there's the other materials piece. So both. But I assume that if I used Eleanor, right, and I use them in a similar capacity of how you're using just, that Eleanor's just, the intelligence that's behind, Open API when it comes to that, or I'm sorry, GPT, right? It's all there. I could just tell her like, hey, do this, right? Pull this information out. And she should be able to do it just fine, not having access to the outside world, right?
Yeah. So I think I understand your question.
Is she
So
smart enough
I
to do what you're
my
doing?
reading, yeah, my reading of their privacy policy and stuff like that is basically that, you know, and they actually talk about it in there. The only thing that they can do is that they can access like individual chats with their support team can access individual chats to troubleshoot like bug fixes and errors. So like, let's say you submitted a support ticket, you said the model's like wigging out and, giving me like bomb recipes, and I'm just trying to figure out like what I'm going to cook for dinner. Like you can submit a support ticket and they can log in and access your chats from the backend. But that's exactly the same as every other software platform you use. So like if you're
Yeah,
in Clio, like you better believe like they can access your client files and see
for
all that
sure.
stuff from the backend.
But either
If
way,
you ask
though,
for support
e-
help.
either way, though, if you're using a Gmail filter, it's only pulling like certain emails, right, and then pushing that in
Oh
for
yeah, yeah.
analyzation. So you're not even. It's not like ChatGPT is analyzing all of your emails. It's basically you're doing an email filter specifically for this one where it pulls.
That's correct.
Okay, well, I like
Yeah, in
that.
this particular automation.
Yeah. So okay, that's
Yeah,
cool. I like that. So let's keep moving along though. So it's filtering your Gmail or whatever email you're using. It's pushing it into ChatGPT, who then is
right.
analyzing with the prompt, right, and then saying like identifying certain
Yeah.
information within the email, right?
Yeah, and like the way you figure out what you need is just to work backwards. So like I I built mine a little bit more fancy than necessary. Like I built our automation so that it will automatically figure out what case the hearing event belongs to, what's the client's email. It will automatically invite the client to the court hearing event, and it will also send them a text and email and all this other stuff. Like you don't have to add all. But the what we're trying to do is at the end of the day is we want to create a calendar event, right? We're trying to auto calendar those events. So what data do I need to auto calendar? That's what I have to think about. Like, what's my end goal? My end goal is to create a calendar event. Well, what data do I need to create a calendar event? All right. Well, that informs what we need to have ChatGPT pull out of the hearing. So like we have a particular format for hearing events. I want the matter name. I want a short description of what the hearing is, and I want the cause number appended to the calendar event title. That's all I want. And then I need to know when it is. So I need a hearing date parameter extracted. And then I need to know what the cause number is because I use that for a lot of things. Like number one, finding the case in our system. I need to find the cause number because it's a unique identifier. And the locations, like where's it going to be? Is it going to be on WebEx? Is it going to be whatever? And that can all come out of the court email. So once I know what I need, I work backwards and I just go into the chat module, and you can see here, it's very simple. You just add a new variable. So you can see the structured data definition section. This will look slightly different in Zapier, but it's the same basic stuff. Create your parameter. Here's the name. Here's the description. Here's the data type. Here's some examples. And that's it. And you just create a new parameter for each thing that you need. And when it comes out, then you can see like if you're mapping stuff in, just like in Zapier, you're trying to map in a piece of data, you can see on the left-hand side here in this little box, here's the data that got mapped out. And you just click a button and it'll pop it in the future. So that's it. And the other thing that you can see, and this is an example, like here, you can see this parse date. So this is an example of that inline function that I was talking about. So like the issue here is that Google Calendar only accepts a search query for a date in a particular format. Like the date has to be in the right structure for Google to recognize that as a valid date.
Yeah.
And the date format that ChatGPT was putting in wasn't right. So I told it to format it exactly in a certain way. So that's kind of an example of what we can do with ChatGPT, with make function. But that's it. Like that could be the whole automation. Court calendar hearing event detected, send it to ChatGPT, create a calendar event. Boom. Now all of a sudden I'm never going to miss court hearing again. Like that's all you have to do. But like I said, if you want to go the next step and like have it connect to your case system, email your client, all that's other stuff. You don't need that. That's just optional.
Well, I'm seeing that. I'm like, oh dear, there's a lot of steps. Not that I couldn't learn it. I mean, it's just another, just going down that rabbit hole. But again, the way you described it though, is basically, it's just a better functioning Zapier, and it's kind of all the same. All these little things are just little pieces that you're building zaps out of. I mean, and everybody has, if you're familiar with Zapier and just building the different steps and the different, I don't know what you call those in Zapier. Every time you add you call them nodules in here, but But every time
Yeah.
you add a new step in Zapier, in a specific Zap, right? It's no different than
Yeah.
here. You're just basically just pulling, doing the same thing, and yeah,
Yeah. Mostly, yeah. It's just horizontal and circular instead of vertical and
yeah,
rectangular.
has the nice colors
Is
and
the
everything.
main
So
is the main Yeah. Yeah. Other than that, the main difference is just those functions and learning how to use those. And again, those are all optional. But sometimes the way that the modules work is a little more geared toward the understanding that Make has a little bit higher functionality. So you do need to, it is a little less forgiving. Like it is less user friendly. Like if you're brand new to automating stuff in Zapier and Make and stuff like that, it is probably easier to start in Zapier
yeah.
because you can, it's better about not letting you make mistakes, and coaching you through problems that come up. But
Well, let me
Make
ask
is
you this.
a little bit closer to real.
Let me ask you
What's
this
up?
question. So, I mean, if I didn't want to, and I mean, I know obviously you're building and troubleshooting and doing all these things, right? With you've tested it, right? You've create custom language and to pull certain information, right? Not to pull the information, then reformat it. If I was like, hey Dan, could you just simply copy that entire um, sequence, the entire function in Make, right? For that entire automation, and just paste it into my Make account. Is that something you can do like on a functionality basis or no? And then just reconnect the
Yeah,
accounts?
Make is pretty cool about letting you share, Make flows that you create. Zapier does the same thing, but in Make, yeah, you can you actually export it as a JSON file that you store on your desktop, and then the other person, you can just upload the JSON file, and then it will automatically create the module structure. Then, yeah, the pain is you have to go back and manually reconnect all the accounts, and it's not that big of a problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can export.
Okay.
You can
Because
definitely
'cause I'm
export.
sure the functionality and
with-
making sure it works, and then just simply, I mean, and then it'll be just basically creating an account or this or that. I mean, I don't know if that's what came into my mind, was like,
mm,
hey, and now because there's a lot of people out there that aren't, they want the functionality and they understand it, but they don't want to spend the time, learning how to
yeah,
build. You know what I mean? And actually going through the different pieces of it. So is that something that I mean, and that's just what came in my mind on that is can
yeah,
we export some of these things out and then reconnect, or just
yeah,
export them out and say, like, here's your file, just reconnect your own stuff, right? That would be much easier because then
yeah.
all of the different pieces and the command prompts and everything are already in there. And then all I'm doing is connecting everything and then playing with it. So I've gotten 80% there, and then the last 20% would be me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting, it's definitely doable, and I've done this kind of work for people a few times, and it's very interesting, and it's a delicate balance because yes, I have spent hundreds of, maybe probably at this point thousands and thousands of hours in learning how to do all this stuff, and to make it seem so easy. But so you're in this awkward spot where it's like you built something once, and then you're like, okay, well, I could just copy paste this into your account. And, but then it's like, well, what about the thousands of hours? So it's an interesting balance, and for kind of
Yeah.
what to do and not overwhelming yourself, you know what I mean? Cause it's like, well, but anyway,
Yeah. No,
but
I
yeah,
get it.
and you can start very simple with those things, and you can go absolutely, absolutely wild. Um, I shared one the other day, and I think you alluded to it, is we built a system, or I built a system for, notifying heirs in a probate proceeding. Cause we'll get a DOH hearing set or a petition to sell real estate or whatever. And we have to notify all the heirs of the hearing, where they need to be. We need to publish in the newspaper and all this other stuff. And it's a very specific thing that has to be sent to everybody. And you want to send a copy of the petition, all that. So, and what had happened is this hasn't happened in 3 years, but we had a hearing. My paralegal was out of the office on an extended vacation, and we had a DOH hearing that we forgot to send certified mail on.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it doesn't happen very often, but I'm like, I just don't want this to happen again. And
Yeah.
so we have an Airtable now where we click a button, and it will generate a notice of hearing for each heir and attach any appended documents like the petition, the whatever, and it'll send it to them for certified mail and regular mail, all automatically via the various APIs and stuff like that. And so like you can go absolutely crazy with it, like, and do some just incredible stuff at the other ends. Like now, like as a single click, we can do a certified mail, regular mail, text, email, like blast properly compliant notice. And then it'll also generate the affidavit of service, with all their names, like, and email and addresses like merged in of the ones who were served. So like it will skip any that like didn't have an address or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, and now it's like one click. So I don't think you could do that in Make, at least, or excuse me, in Zapier, at least not easily. So
So are you,
it's pretty,
let me ask
pretty
you a question about that. That is very cool. And it's like, and some of these, probate, case uses, right? I think it makes a lot of sense, especially like something like this, right? Where it's like a notice of hearing that has to go out, right? If it's, I know you use it for like waivers, right? Like statutory waivers, like the waivers go out, but like, I mean, I think that there's custom tweaking that we do on ours, where it's like, okay, well, the letter is going to include the waiver, but then we also need to include like an inventory, an amended inventory. Like you're supposed to send in like, the inventories and the actual statement of account, proposal of distribution, so they can actually waive everything, right? So, but I think in this particular case of the the DOH, I mean, it makes perfect sense, right? So, is that being triggered? How is that? What's the trigger for that? Is that being triggered by something coming in, like the case, basically the judge is entering in an order for setting it for hearing, or is it like somebody's manually entering in the hearing
yeah,
date and then you're clicking the button and then it's pulling that hearing date information? So, how are you? Is there something on the front end that
yeah.
before the button, or no?
So, that's a good question. So in this particular automation, yes, it's a button, and what it does is it fetches in the event record, it fetches in all the air records, it fetches in the connected documents. So like the way it works is it's an Airtable, so we have an event record, and you can connect other documents to that event record. So like let's say I've got, the petition, whatever that I want to send, I've got those attached as related records to the event. And
Yeah.
then we have a box that's like a checkbox for WebEx, whatever. And then there's a button that you can click that says send notice based on the selected service types. So like if you select certified mail or regular mail or whatever, it will send for all of them. And so that's how we deal with that issue. Cause to me, it's a lot more important to get everything included when you're doing service, because like, it's like mandatory and required. And if you don't do it right, it's screwed up. Whereas you
Yeah.
alluded to our other automation, we actually have two different ones. There's an onboarding one where we're getting renunciation consent waivers, but then there's also the offboarding one where we're getting waivers for independently administered estates. And
Yeah.
that auto is just, it is more simplified. Like that particular automation does not allow you to like add the full, statement of account and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
It assumes, because we're in independent administration, you're probably not going to be bitching about what the other person did because you
Yeah.
already said. So I'm going to experiment with it, and
Yeah.
hopefully everybody will sign the waivers, without fully auditing everything. But if they do want to see it, we can just send it to them. That's kind of my thought process. Is if
Yeah.
anybody asks, we can send it to them. Now, could we automate it where we do send everything? Yes, it would just add more steps and kind of sort of defeat the purpose, which was to put it on autopilot and think about it. So we'll see.
And I guess,
It's a beta test now.
My brain always goes to like, applying, and this is kind of, it always goes to applying an automation, right? Can we apply it universally across every use case, right? Every case. And the answer is you don't need to, right? And I'm always kind of struggling with that piece, right? So you can press the button when things are very simple, right? And it just sends them the waivers just like you need to, or whatever it is you're trying to do in that case, right? If it's a simple case, press the button. If it's not a simple case, just do it manually like you're doing before, right? Manually put the stuff together,
Yeah.
manually, send it, right? So I think that
Yeah.
I don't think there's the end all be
Yeah.
all
Because
of automation, right?
yeah. Yeah. For me, it's kind of like a little bit higher than 80/20. It's like 95, 5. Like is this auto going to be helpful in like 95% of the cases? Well, then let's probably put it together. But, if there's, a significant amount of the time where it doesn't apply, my thinking is like you have to approach it in one of two ways. You either need to like restructure the automation so that it is more flexible to alternative circumstances, like, maybe put together a form that has different checkboxes instead of making it happen completely automatically. Like stuff that I have happen completely automatically, I usually only do when it's necessary in every single case, or very close to every single case. Whereas if it's not in every single case, I usually will have like, a button or a form that you got to submit or something like that to kind of trigger that flow. And then to remind you to do it, it will usually generate like an automatic task or something. That I feel like that tends to work pretty well.
Yeah, I think that's smart. I mean, like I said, I think my hesitation on some of the automations right now is that, I'm like I said, I'm trying to apply it up to across the board to everything, and um, I think that it makes complete sense to apply that 80/20 principle and go that route as opposed to,
Mhm.
and again, I think that I think I'm at least for my current, my current tech stack, um, I think I need to just, I think we've advised people this recently, like, about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, where it was, do an audit of all the stuff that you're manually doing, right? And maybe it's calendaring in, hearing dates, right? And it's, you're sending out the same thing to heirs in every single case, right? It's not dependent or it doesn't change, right? Or if it's you're sending out to whatever, right? No matter what your actual case is, figure out, make a list of those. Because I mean, honestly, no matter how many automations I build into my practice and how many things I automate, there's always still stuff that's being done manually, right? For a certain reason. And then, but like it's evaluating it and saying, hey, you know, is there a way to speed this up, right? When it comes to like you said, like your example today was calendaring, right? Like we get emails from the courts and then we're manually calendaring those things in, right? Which should not be really happening. And there's so many great tools out there to simplify that sort of thing. And just think about that make.com automation that you built. How incredible that would be for somebody who's doing like high volume litigation, right? I mean, like you and I, you're using it as a
Mhm.
use case right now for probably mostly DOH stuff, right? I mean, I don't know if there's a whole lot of other stuff where you're getting hearings for, right, in the probate space, and you're doing estate planning, right?
Mhm.
So, not a whole lot of hearings unless you're like, getting called into, show cause hearings because, something but most of the time
Well,
it's, hearings for
we have
that.
we
So
have a
it's
fair
like
number of supervised cases. Yeah. Yeah.
oh yeah, supervised cases too, right?
Sorry, go ahead.
But my point is that, I think that, it's a great use for, low volume court cases, but just think about what that can do for somebody who is out there trying to manage, a volume of criminal cases, right? They're getting hearings every day. They're getting a new hearing date for something, right? Or it's being rescheduled, right? And they got a paralegal who's tracking it, manually doing it. Like that's a huge value add, I think, depending
Yeah.
on your particular practice.
Yeah, I just helped finish up a project helping a guy put it together for a traffic practice, and he had like literally like 10 hearings a day or something like that. It's just bananas. And because the way they send is the way they do it in Missouri is they generate a separate in most counties and municipalities, they will actually generate a separate case number and separate case for each traffic ticket. So if a person has multiple tickets, which is very common, for whatever reason, uh, they will generate a separate case for each one. And let's say you're hearing all of them on the same day, you might get like 4 or 5 different hearings scheduled for a single person in a single court for that day.
That's
And
crazy.
so it adds up to a tremendous volume of hearing scheduling. But his auto scheduling system is a lot more sophisticated because it went further. I got really wild with it. So it will detect like if there is an existing event and it will merge all the cases together into one calendar event. So you don't have like 5 different events, and it will automatically reschedule because they would get rescheduled a lot because it'd be like, well, you'd enter on the case and you want to continue. So you can go as crazy with this. But the point I want to convey with that is that like, you're absolutely right that the more hearings you have, the more valuable I think something like this gets. But it also, you know, can introduce more complexity that can still be resolved, like can still be addressed with an automated technical solution, which is awesome. I find it just awesome. But anyway, so we are coming up on time here. Time
Yep.
has just flown by. So let's start shifting gears. And one of the things we always talk about is the tip of the week. And what's my tip of the week? What's a good one? I'll mention this. If you're into, recording videos for your firm, if you want to record social or YouTube or podcast or whatever you're doing, highly encourage you but you want to make it easy and introduce like AI tools and stuff like that. I highly recommend you check out Descript, Descript. It's very cool in terms of being able to like edit a video very quickly. You can run AI prompts over it to, refine the audio and do all kinds of stuff. We use it on the show. If you're at all curious about generating content and how would I do that? Well, Descript will take care of a lot of it for you. Check it out, folks. Highly recommend.
Awesome. Yeah, and so my tip of the episode for today is one of the things that we've been working on a lot is intake for our firm. Making it easier. Just really working on the client experience, or the potential client experience when it comes to the initial consultation, how the logistics work and everything. But one of the things we found is that we were sending, we would be on the phone, we would send, potential clients that we wanted to sign up, their representation agreements and their payment link, right? Via email, right? So we were doing it via email, like we're gonna email this over to you. And found that there's a good amount of pushback, not pushback, but there's that excuse of, oh, I'm not at my computer. I actually can't check email until I get home. I can't check it at work, or whatever. And then there's that delay, right? There's that delay in the actual conversion. So we just simply I went through in about 10 minutes and created just text templates, so that in Pipedrive, we send out, an email and to the client and automatically text them as well, and text them the same exact links, so they get it immediately via text and email. And then so it's I just texted it to you, and whatever works best for you. So that's kind of our approach now is, let's make it really easy and comfortable for the client on signing up cases, right? And so what do they prefer? They prefer to go into their email because they don't want to click on text links. Fine. Like, we'll walk you through your email. If they prefer to do it on their phone because they can't, because their computer's old and at home and they got to pull it out or whatever, like, fine. Like, we'll make it really, really easy and make it convenient for what their preference is. And the texting of the rep agreements, or it's just 2 links, right? And so make sure your links are obviously, we use DocuSign, Power Forms. They're all built out, right? Whatever it is you use for your representation agreements, make it very simple for them, no matter what your practice area is, to click on your representation agreement, DocuSign it, e-sign it, whatever the e-signature is through your platform, and get back to you in real time, right? And that's definitely, we've seen an increase in conversions, of converting upfront faster by using texts with the actual rep agreements and the payment links. Like, click the payment right then on the phone, right? Click on the link, boom, click the payment, and there's no excuses, right? We're off to the races. So,
yeah, texting is huge. I think a lot of people just really prefer to communicate through text. And I recently finished writing the Make connector for OpenPhone, because OpenPhone is our phone system, which I think is fantastic. Everybody should check it out. It's phenomenal, especially for small law firms. They don't pay me to say that. I could probably get an affiliate link or something. I probably should, but like, I utterly love OpenPhone. But they didn't have a Make connector, or they did. Some guy wrote one, but he wanted to charge you a bunch of money to use it. So I wrote one, and it's awesome. And now I can send text through any part of our workflow, just by adding an OpenPhone module in Make, if we want to send anything through text. And the cool part is that it sends out through our main voice over IP phone. So like, it's not coming out of our CRM's Twilio integration or whatever. It's coming out of our main phone line. So like, it retains that whole context, which is really nice.
That is nice.
Anyway, great tip. Definitely get engagements on those text messages out there, guys. So that's it for this week. If you enjoyed the show, check us out on Apple Podcasts and Spotify Podcasts. Leave us a 5-star review wherever, so more people can find us and enjoy the show. If you want to take it offline, join us in the Legal Tech Collective Facebook group, where we talk more about automation and technology and AI and all sorts of fun things like that on a regular basis. But that is it for today. Thank you, John. I'll talk to you next time.
Thank you, Dan. Always a pleasure here. I'll see you next week.
See you later.